I'm Kathy Nekraz, and Julie Ciccarelli is right there with me. We are the book club coordinators, and our book is The Persuaders. The Persuaders? Yes, it is with an S. And we've just, this is our third meeting, and we're moving along pretty well with it. Bill will keep an eye on the hands that are being raised, as will both of us, and we'll give you every opportunity to say what you would like to say. Give everybody a chance. And if you'd rather put your questions or whatever in the chat, or something that you would like to contribute that maybe we could all like to, check out in terms of a link or something, we really would love that too. But Julie and I want this to be a back and forth. We want to have your opinions on things. We do have some slides, which I hope will work out okay. Christine is our master with that. So the chapters we're going to be talking about tonight are chapter 3, 4, and maybe get into some of 5. I'd like to. I'm afraid I'm going to jump to chapter 4 to get us started, just because Julie and I both love this 2 paragraphs. We feel like this really kind of sets the tone for the evening. And if you have your book with you, it's pages 128 and 129, Inside Outside Game. So this is Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. I have a hard time saying her name, Ocasio-Cortez, speaking, working in a Bernie Sanders rally. And she had a wonderful relationship with him, especially early on, because he gave her a feeling of self-worth. And once again, like we talked before, it's not so much what we say or what we do, it's how we make another person feel. So I'm just going to read this because I think she says it best. Last February, she said, pointing across the East River, I was working as a waitress in downtown Manhattan at a taqueria. I worked shoulder to shoulder with undocumented workers who often worked harder and hardest amount of money. I was on my feet working 12-hour days with no structured breaks. I didn't have health care. I wasn't being paid a living wage. And I didn't think I deserved any of those things. Upon hearing these words from out in the sea of placards, a man yelled, I can relate. Because that is the script that we tell working people here and all over this country, Ocasio-Cortez continued, that your inherent worth and value as a human being is dependent on an income that another person decided to pay us. But what we're here to do is to turn around that very basic logic. And then she delivered a sentence that I, the author, having heard many political endorsements, will not soon forget. It wasn't until I heard of a man by the name of Bernie Sanders, she said, stopping mid-phrase, here to take in the crowd and the roars, that I began to question and assert and recognize my inherent value as a human being. She went on to catalog the virtues of the senator from Vermont, but it was that line that hung in the air and that helped me to see Sanders' achievement even more clearly. She wasn't saying Bernie had persuaded her into an ideology, at least not at the beginning. She wasn't saying he had enlisted her in the battle for a particular policy. He had persuaded her that she was human, fully human. She said, I used to frankly abuse myself mentally about how I'm nothing. She once said of those days before her political awakening with those gross men hitting on her at the Flats Fizz Taqueria and her $200 a month health insurance that came with an awful $8,000 deductible and no stairway to a better life in sight. I realized that I need to choose myself, she had said, because if I don't, I'm just going to waste away. I'm just going to give up. So she joined Bernie Sanders' campaign and really wanted to be behind him and get him the nomination. I think what she said there kind of goes through her entire chapter about her. She was a woman who had her feet and her head in 2 worlds growing up. She went to excellent schools in Westchester, but she had family in the Bronx, and her father did a business there. So she would be back and forth, and she realized that her education was excellent, and her cousins, they were 40 minutes away, and their education was not nearly as good as hers. She wanted something more, and Bernie had that message that he too was challenging so many things. On page 131, she writes, "Are we just angry all the time, or are we looking to aspirationally build a better future for people?" Bernie wanted people who would fight. His message was us versus them. Do you think, and I'm asking all of you in this group, Julie and I, did you feel that Bernie was too strident and too unbending? AOC began to see that in him, and that he wasn't going to be able to expand his base, that it's almost like he had what he had to say and he was the educator. And AOC saw herself as a promoter and an engager.
And I think Bernie was not willing to compromise. And they say politics is the art of compromise. And he had good ideas, but he wasn't willing to work with anybody, and he wasn't willing to compromise. And that's not a way to get what you want in politics.
Right. I think that some people, and maybe Bernie, felt like he did not want to even look to compromise. He didn't know how to do that. And I think as the chapter progresses, we realize what are some of the things that AOC did in order to learn how to keep hold of her dreams and what she wanted, but to also be engaging.
And she had to learn to compromise. I think psychologically her upbringing and her education was very hard for her, because she was a poor Hispanic in an upper class white neighborhood when she was going to school, and she had to deal with people like that. But when she went home, even into her house, she would be speaking Spanish, and she did realize how it was her cousins weren't doing well in terms of education, and she had to work within those two worlds. And it was hard, but I think that really formed part of her personality, where she's willing to listen to people and to compromise with people and really listen to where they're coming from.
She definitely wanted change, just like Bernie, but she knew the importance of finding a path through conversation with people who initially might disagree with her. First, a couple chapters of this book, we talked a lot about the 75%, the people that are worth talking to, the 90% who you really don't have to, if they're with you 90% of the time, that's pretty great. And you can do a lot of wonderful things. She was able to lean in and try to understand where other people were.
Does anybody have any thoughts about anything that we're talking about? How do you feel about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
I wasn't so sure I liked her very much when I first saw her. She seemed really pretty bold and like, whoa. But then I saw her in a couple talk shows and she was wonderful and so smart. And because she was a science person, I think that helped her too to be very analytical about things and get the answers. She did not rest until she had some answers to things. And I really appreciated that in her. The next.
Kathy, I thought Bernie was very hardline, but he was so hardline and so consistent. Really, the youth started listening to him really strongly. And like you, when I first heard of AOC, I was not immediately drawn to her. But as I've seen her in different talk shows, and as she has been presented now, she is very enduring. She's figured out how to make people understand what she's talking about and what it means. That's my take anyway.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Eileen Brown, it looks like you had your hand up. Eileen, did you want to share?
Yeah, well, with Bernie Sanders, a chapter before, you got a real overview of where he was at. But by the end of that chapter, it seemed like he could not reach people. He sounded kind of like an old man. And then in chapter 4, we come up with this young lady is vital and I guess charismatic in her own way. Saw a real dichotomy between the two of them, and yet she would listen to what Bernie Sanders said. And I just see seemed to be that she was trying to work with him and learn from him.
Yeah, I think she understood and approved of his ideas, but it was just his approach wasn't working.
Yeah, she just saw he wasn't going to be expanding his base. My son was really loved Bernie, and I for me, he just seemed a little too maybe too angry. I wasn't wild about him, but I definitely was in agreement with a lot of the things that he was for, definitely, but maybe not as strident. So, anybody else have anything to share before we move on? Okay, Christine, if we could move on to the next. It says Ernesto Nito. Beautiful. So AOC met up with Ernesto Nito. He's with the National Hispanic Institute, and she loved very much a lot of the things that he was for. One of them was for the third reality. And it's not that we are going to compromise too much, but we're going to help a community see itself in a new way. He wanted to empower people with renewed self-awareness, calling them to tell their story. He was very, very good at telling stories, at writing stories. You probably read that in the book. She actually taught Latino children a few days a week, and she loved to be helping them learn to tell their own story. She kind of pulled it out of them. He wrote books. She wanted to write things that would be the demographics of these Latino children in her area so that they could connect and realize that they have a story to tell and that it's something that is very real. She wanted to put a new face on the Bronx.
And also they didn't have to be like the proper in the regular society. They could create and honor their own heritage as well as going on and succeeding in their own way.
Very good point. They could speak for themselves.
Yes.
And not be afraid and feel proud. So the one thing that I think she said is don't wait to react to someone else's idea of what you are to be or what you are to have. Speak out, feel confident enough in yourself or get there, and then create what you want. So I found that Ernesto Nito, and there's more about him throughout the chapter. He was a very big influence on her preparing herself for politics and for the bigger stage. Anybody have anything to say about the third reality or how you feel about things that we're talking about so far?
I think one of the things was that the myth about her was she was just a waitress working in this restaurant, but she had worked with Ernesto and all kinds of community organizing. So she did have a good experience before she got elected.
Yes, she did have her feet in both worlds, that's for sure. The next screen, Christine, it starts with AOC, opening up your posture. So from what we are reading between Bernie and AOC is that they had some really strong ideas. Bernie wanted Medicare for all. She would love to have more free college for people, just helping people get up the ladder a little bit, step up, and not just have to stay where their relatives might have stayed in that regard. And I have a personal story. My husband and I, we run a dental practice and we serve a lot of Latinos, a lot of Mexican families, and we love our dental practice and we love our community. And we have children that are, oh my goodness, they got 4.5 GPAs as seniors. And I asked them, now you're heading to college, right? And they go, well, yes, I'm going to go to the community college, and I'm thrilled that they are. That's wonderful. But I'm thinking about another person, a white person who had those kinds of grades. And in my judgment, they would be heading off to a four-year school, maybe to an Ivy League school. Who knows? I think that these young people did not know how to navigate college. No one ever really took them by the hand to give them a worth that they could do this. And so I see where helping a community pull out their story, redesign themselves, and know that they can do it. It's coming. So anyway, and they're all doing great at these community colleges, and I'm hoping they go on to 4-year. That's my goal for them. But so one of the things that AOC was big on, and I think that Nito really helped her with, was opening up your posture. That's on page 132. And Julie and I are just giving you the top points of it. So it's not changing what you believe. If you believe you would like to see the reduction of the school debt, the college debt, or that you're strong on your feelings about abortion being repealed, how that you'd like to see something change back to a more Roe v. Wade type thing coming up. We all have our values and our visions. If we open up our posture, that means that we can lean in and we can feel confident enough with what we believe that we can really listen to someone. And what AOC says with it's opening up your posture, what Nito told her was it's respecting the other's humanity, not belittling that person. So leaning in, asking questions, hearing why they think like they do if they don't think exactly like you do.
And we had a nice experience in my area. I'm in Arlington Heights. In one of the high schools, there was a star runner who was Hispanic, and they found out, of course, that he didn't have a citizen. He wasn't able to go to school, but because the community surrounded him and pushed for him, he was able to get into college. And that's what communities have to do. We do have to take care of people and not to think, well, they're different or less deserving. So I was encouraged by that as opposed to some of the anti-immigrant talk we're having now.
Does anybody else have an experience that either that they found themselves in conversation with someone that they didn't exactly agree with, kind of like what we've been talking about these last couple of book club meetings, and maybe how you leaned in or asked questions to anybody? I was gonna try to get it. The thing is, I hang out with people that agree with me, and that's not good. I'm going to be campaigning soon, going door to door. So maybe I'll have a lot more practice at that point. But does anybody have anything to say on that?
Well, I always tell my friends, you're in Arlington Heights. We live in a bubble. You have to talk to other people and get other viewpoints.
Right.
Yeah, I remember last book club we had, someone talked about meeting somebody who was a Trumper in line in the supermarket and how they had a little discussion. That person kind of dealt with that. And it's always good to stand up, even in public, if someone's saying something that's rude or not respectful of ideas or people.
I had something the other way. I was listening to NPR on Sunday morning, and they had a very Trump Congress representative on, and she was talking about I believe it was about Trump's trial right now, and that she mentioned that Bill Clinton spent $850,000 to keep his affair with Flowers. I think that was her last name, quiet. And I'm going, oh, he did? She called me to start looking up and questioning, because I had some very strong views about Trump, and it's just horrible. But she called me to look up a few things. And if we can have people who don't agree with us leave us wanting to look up a few things to see, maybe they won't, possibly open their mind a little bit, would be a success.
Kath,
Yes.
if I can interject, I think I've mentioned in the past that Jim McGrath and myself, we go down to this current events group, which has about 24 mega people. And the two of us and Harold White we kind of defend democracy up against them. But we're only allowed to talk after other people talk in kind of an order. Because of this persuaders and what you guys have been doing, I've altered my questioning and my comments from one of confrontation to one to gain some agreement. And they really get crazy about immigration and open border and all these things. And so I've learned to say, post things about the fact that, you know, we really didn't have immigration rules in the United States until the early 1900s, when all of our grandparents came over here. They basically, if they got to Ellis Island, they were in, unless they were really sick. And at that point, they were sent back. And then people will start to say, well, yeah, you know, my folks came over at such and such. So we evolve a conversation that I try to get people to understand that immigration is not bad. And then I will come back later on and I'll say, you know, it's really been important that the immigrants are working, even if they're not per se a citizen. They're still paying into Social Security. They're still paying in to Medicare, etc. Not only that, but the companies they're working for are paying in, and that's helping us. And people will question me, well, is that true? And then I can finally give them a fact to say that, yes, it is true. This is how much is estimated every year that comes in. And I was very confrontational back before you started doing these Zooms on the persuaders, and that has helped me. And Jim has also altered his perspective. So I would just say there are ways to kind of get agreement and then talk about the truth that you believe, and then follow up with something that everybody can agree with. And it may be something as simple as, on the immigration, aren't we all glad that our great-grandparents immigrated to the United States? And that's a simplistic, because it gets quite hot and heated, but it is something that's helped. I just wanted to toss that in.
And I heard one congressperson, I think it was the legislator, told people, particularly on the other side, he said, we're all immigrants according to the Native American people. So everybody who came, he said, we didn't have to worry about immigrants because we were the immigrants coming to America.
And
Kathy?
yes,
Hi, sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand, so I just hit unmute. Julie, it was interesting when you said you live in a bubble in Arlington Heights. I live in a bubble here in Cherokee County in Murphy, North Carolina, which is all red. I mean, it is all red, and it is very violently red. And I work in real estate, and I have a Facebook page, and then I also have my personal page. But I used to post my political feelings on there, and I had it actually impact the kind of business that I could do very negatively. The morning when Trump won the election was a very, very dark day for me personally. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, and I went into my office, and the celebrating, the joyful, the joy, and I was still stunned that it had happened. And as time has gone by, I choose my audience carefully, because everybody has like a gun rack on their car. And I know it sounds crazy. Have I been frightened sometimes? Yeah, I have. I have been a little bit. I'm not quite as vocal as I used to be. I do choose my words, which just irritates the hell out of me, because I want to be able to step up and say exactly what I feel, but I'm cautious. I know there's certain people that I can talk to about how I feel, and there's people that I would never talk to about how I feel. I will attempt after this meeting to perhaps do a little persuading. I do find myself talked down to a bit when I do try to do that. I have had close friends say to me, "Oh, Gail, you know you're my favorite Democrat. In fact, you're my only Democrat." You know, this is a very interesting discussion for me, and I appreciate hearing everybody's tools that they've used to not to blend, but to share. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. That is you. It's almost like you read the first two chapters, because when you say that there's some people that you just know you're not going to talk to, it's not worth it. And then there's other people that you feel more comfortable. That's kind of what we were talking about in the first couple chapters. Those that maybe you can help them see something a little differently. Not necessarily change their view the first time, but just get into conversation and be respectful. And maybe they too can start seeing things a little differently. That's good. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Does anybody else have anything to say, something that they've encountered since they started the book? Oh, Mark Lundholm, you raised your hand. Yes, Mark.
Yeah, I spent last weekend over at in Rock Island, where I went to school, where I grew up. The geography department at Augustana College had their 75th reunion, and there were presentations, and one of the presentations was by a professor who is at University of Ohio in Athens, talking about immigration. And he was and I want John Porterfield to talk about, because he was talking about the immigration going back and forth between immigrant communities here in the U.S. and Ecuador. And they'll come up and work here and build houses, and they'll go back to Ecuador and build the same kind of houses back down in their communities down in Ecuador. We don't hear about that. It was an eye-opener for me. So there's a back and forth to South and Central America. It was a different perspective that we don't usually hear. And it was really interesting. And seeing the things over in the Quad Cities area, I don't know if any of you have ever been over there, but there's immigrant communities happening around the Quad Cities that are really fascinating. Markets happening, immigrant gardening communities cropping up all over the place, and it was just fascinating. It was very inspiring, and I really enjoyed my time there. There were highs and lows, but anyway, it was an eye opener for me, and I enjoyed it. And so I don't know if John wants to comment, but about that kind of thing. Maybe he sees that too. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. So, hi, everybody.
Thank you, Mark. I do know that some of the smaller towns are really wanting the immigrants that are just coming now to get some work permits, because they really do need help. Since COVID and everything, things have changed. And so they could use people who would like to work in restaurants, work in some factories, maybe work on farms. So I guess just getting these work permits takes some time. That's what I understand. That's great. Thank you, Mark. We've always been built on the backs of a lot of people, a lot of immigrants and slaves, and we need to be sure that we recognize and that people can be treated. Like as AOC was saying, she had $200 premium every month, which I'm sure was difficult for her to get health care, and it was an $8,000 deductible, which I can relate to, and just things that people don't even believe or understand happens out there. Here she had a college degree and was moving along, but still struggling financially. One thing that Bill talked about was going to this Schomburg group, which I always love to hear him talk about this. But Christine, the next slide would be meet them where they are approach, kind of like what Bill was doing. It's on page 156. So AOC was on an NPR interview with Steve Inscape, and it's on page 156, I believe. And at that time, she was talking about how abolishing ICE, because they were coming in and being definitely a lot, very assertive with some of the immigrants that were those that were not documented, that were living here for a while or living with families that were documented. So she had said to him that she thought ICE should be abolished. And she then went on to say that ICE was developed after 9/11 with the, let's see, I have it right, the Patriot Act. So at that time, there was a lot of fear about anybody, about everybody. And that needed not necessarily that we aren't to make sure that the people that do stay here, that are here, are abiding by the rules and things like that. So she actually, because Steve was kind of surprised and he really wanted to push her on this, and she came back with very sensible responses. So she was dealing with Steve's skepticism with a sensibleness that helped her idea of how to maybe answer a problem that is there, not in such a radical way, which maybe Steve might have thought was radical. But she was ready, like Bill was ready, with a first sentence to explain what she meant, what she saw for the future, and then a second sensible explanation, and a third. And I think we need to do our homework as we are talking with people during this election year. You don't have to be an expert on everything, but get some facts under your belt, things that people are unhappy with, and maybe you can see an answer to this that's being presented by the Democrats or by Congress, whatever. Like if you were to
Yeah.
yes, go ahead.
One of the things around here is just, I think people are blind because we could not survive in Arlington Heights without the immigrants. They do all the landscaping. They work in the Walmart stores. They work in McDonald's. And also I see improvement, like the McDonald's I go to now, the franchise owner is Hispanic, and most of the people there, you could tell they've just come over because they can't speak English, but they're friendly and it's a nice place to go to. But people, I think sometimes they're blind and they don't want to listen to facts, and those are the ones that are kind of difficult to deal with. They're happy that their lawns are mowed, but they don't want to deal with immigrants.
Right. And sometimes the prices for getting their lawns done is a little less expensive. And we all like that, of course. The next screen, Christine, would be about the self shouldn't be an afterthought in the pursuit of system change. There you go. All of this that we are going to be talking with people about, hopefully, these next few months, AOC feels strongly that we do need to have some self-reflection, self-awareness, like she worked with the Latino children. Why do I think the way I think? What is my story? How was I raised? What might I need to change about myself to better pursue the goals I wish to achieve during this election year or in all different parts of my life? Anybody in the last few weeks, if with all the reading and maybe looking at life a little differently, have you thought that knowing your own story and sharing it with others might help open up a conversation, might break down some barriers? I lost my dad when I was 16. I was very young, and he had been quite ill, and my mother had been ill right before that. And I realized that my teenage years were my teenage years. That's all I knew. But that my life was a little bit more in turmoil than others who had a more stable and healthy lifetime in their family. So sometimes that helps me to understand people who've had families where there's illness for a long time, how that can change the whole dynamics of a family, and that maybe healthcare concern with the bills, and they're concerned with a person not being able to work because they're ill. I feel like I have a little bit of an understanding of what that does to a family. So I had to kind of look into that as I was approaching people who have the same situation. Anybody else have a?
I think I've learned that people are really complicated. Just because someone really is a magna doesn't mean that they're not good people. And some of my friends are really believe in Trump, but I know they're so good in other ways. And I think, well, maybe it's the way they've been brought up, or their families have always been kind of prejudiced. And some people learn from experience, and some people are just stuck in their ways. but some people who are liberal aren't very nice either. I mean, yeah. So I always approach, and I do want to learn from people and ask them where they come from. And so you get a more rounded picture of what people are really like.
I find people too that are, a lot of them are Republicans that are in our practice, and they're very self-sufficient people. I mean, they take very good care of their homes. They take very good care of their possessions. They're fair. I agree with you on that, Julie. It's just they just don't believe that other people can't do what they do, that they've built everything themselves, and they've lived their life just so. And I think they just sometimes feel like, why can't everybody else be like that? And so many other people aren't like that. They don't have that in their lives. Bill, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I did. Just kind of working off of what you were talking about. Our life experiences, many of us on this call have seen an awful lot in our time. And what I particularly am thinking about was a conversation I had again at the current events where people were just bemoaning the fact that Biden has just let interest rates go crazy. Inflation is damning. We've never seen anything like this. And I have to remind people in the gentlest of way that when I moved out of Atlanta to move up here to Arlington Heights, interest rates for home mortgages were 18%.
Yeah.
And when you introduce something like that, people go, well, yeah, when I moved, I had to pay 14%. So I try to then bring them back to reality. Well, people now are paying 7%. Although it's more than it was 3, 4, 5 years ago, it is not unique to us. And then when they get really crazy about, I don't know how people can afford to even buy food, I have to get them to agree, based on my experience, that 3 years ago I got a raise on Social Security of 5.9%. Last year I got a raise of 8.7%, and this year I got 3.2%. Didn't you all get the same raise? Because that's about 21% compounded, and that's more than the inflation over those last 3 years. And they all are nodding their heads in agreement. And then they all of a sudden realize, oh, the son of a gun. And then they tell me, haven't you bought gas lately? But there are ways to use our experiences that we have, and particularly now, because many of us, when we were going to school, when I was going to school, there were all kinds of protests about Vietnam. Things got pretty dicey in Kent State. The National Guard actually shot several people. And people forget that. And so today, when people are going, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. I said, well, let me tell you about Vietnam. Let me tell you about how these things grow. And I would just say for all of us here, we have so many life experiences that we can share to support what Biden's been doing, what the administration's been doing, or what we'd like him to do. And that is what's so great about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. That's great. Before we end the chapter on AOC, I wanted to get into a little bit, Julie and I wanted to get in a little bit about the art of messaging, just a little bit. I didn't even finish that chapter. Does anybody have a comment about AOC, about Bernie, about what you might have learned, like what went, wow, I didn't know anything about these particular things, or anything at all that is, I found the chapter's amazing. Well, if you have something you want to put in the chat, that would be great. Mark Lundholm just put in, the wealthy oligarchs think that they are self-made when that's virtually never true. Thank you, Mark. That's right. Exactly. Very good. In getting onto the chapter, The Art of Messaging, I just kind of jumped into it a little bit. I'm not sure Julie was able to, but BLAK, Black Lives Activist Kenosha. So that's what started the chapter. And if you remember back to August of 2020, the shooting of Jacob Blake, he was left paralyzed. It was a domestic violence, and the police were called and they shot him. The Kenosha people wanted to be peaceful in demonstrating. They wanted to honor him. They were angry, but they strived to be peaceful and demonstrate their concerns. They wanted to speak on their own behalf. Black Lives Activist Kenosha was started with that particular incident. The local residents then were kind of inundated with white militia. The Kyle Rittenhouse, remember the 17-year-old who had an AR-15 and shot 3 people, killing 2, I believe. And then things really started to get uglier. And the one thing that was mentioned by the author was that the media really focused on the looting that happened, the burning of property. A policeman was knocked down. Maybe there were more. And even Biden was saying, yes, we can demonstrate, but looting and burning of property, those are crimes that is uncalled for. And yet the people that were living in Kenosha, those that lived there, those that were terribly affected by the shooting, there were lives that were a life that was lost, families that were changed, that their life maybe didn't seem as important as the things that were being focused on by the media. So Black Lives Activist Kenosha was started, and race class narrative action. I have heard this in our groups, race class narrative. And honestly, I understand it, but I didn't know where it came from. This person, Annette Shankar Osorio, who is was from California, she had spent some time in Wisconsin before the Jacob Blake shooting. And she had been working with a Wisconsin organization called All in Wisconsin. And what she was initiating was a race class narrative. So what that means is even the poor people who are white, they are part of this too, where they're being underserved, where they're being looked down upon. And she said that we can band together to build a better messaging. With the Black leaders of BLAK, they learned through Annette Shankar Osorio how to make demands, challenge systems of aggression, challenge the justice system that had been unfair to them for many years, but to do it without fear, but also combine it with a vivid, inviting, liberating, positive vision of the future. Like what we read in AOC's chapter. Don't just be angry, but take that anger and, as Michelle Obama said, if they talk low, we walk tall. We're gonna look to the high end, and that doesn't always work. They're working with Black community leaders, Black organizations, people of color, people who are poor, and helping them get more of a foot up and looking at things in a more positive way and fighting for what they need to fight for. That's all I have to say about that. If anybody has anything they would like to talk about when it comes to messaging, I know, Bill, you've done digital messaging. You're using TikTok, not TikTok. What do you use?
We use Threads, we use Instagram, and we use X, which is Twitter. We do that every Wednesday and Thursday for about an hour and a half. And then every other Friday, we work, NWSOFA-Indivisible works with Evanston Indivisible and DuPage Indivisible in presenting the truth sandwiches, which is setting up Facebook, all social media to get the message out. And it's kind of amazing. You put something out there and you think, well, it's just going out in the wind. What's going to happen? And then a couple of days later, you look back and there's like 20 or 30 people that have liked it, and 5 or 6 people that have, in fact, not only liked it, but reposted it. And every once in a while, you catch somebody that's got tens of thousands of followers, and you go, in a week, you go, wow, I got 200 hits on that. Now, you don't know who's actually seen that, but usually it's only people who either agree or violently disagree with you. And I'm running in the high 90% of people that agree with me. Either that or they just haven't found my tweets or my threads or my Instagram. But and and I don't post as Bill Davis. I post as NWSOFA, and so it's very engaging. And several years back, when we had a big local contest, we were able to figure out how to localize our comments to the candidates there, and had the candidates come on. That gave us a whole additional reach to folks. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it was fun to talk about.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm not one of those that's doing very well. I do Facebook and that's about it. I don't know if anybody else is better than I am.
That's
I'm,
great.
I'm lucky I get that done. What I am putting in the chat right now is Greater Palatine Area Dems, they're having a meeting tomorrow evening. It is in person and it's in their small office on Northwest Highway. I'm going to just finish this chat. I can't talk and chat at the same time either, but letter writing. They have opportunities for campaigning, for doing some phone banking. So we can use some of our ways that we're learning how to communicate with that. Also, there are a lot of different organizations in NWSOFA where we can hone our skills, that's for sure. Let's see, I'm just going to finish this. Julie, do you have anything to say?
But I was going to ask Bill, because if he listened like I did to the deep canvassing, it was kind of the same thing. Maybe, Bill, you could elaborate also, but it was how to talk to people and to be a really careful listener. If you see something or they say something that you can kind of agree with, then you keep the conversation going. But the important thing is when you're canvassing is to be pleasant, but also be a listen and listen to their story and try to figure out where they're coming from. When we were canvassing Rolling Meadows, we went to someone's door and she was young and her children were in homeschool. They were young, but she was in favor of guns and she had guns, and it just like really upset me, but I just had to keep quiet. I mean, I did question her a little bit, but I could see that she felt that she was right and she needed those guns. So you do what you can. Yeah, but you're always pleasant and respectful and listen to what people are saying.
But also get
And
your
you-
point, get your point across though too, right?
Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
sure they know what you believe in,
Yeah.
what you are fighting for, especially at this time. We have so much.
I was going to add to that, Julie and Kathy. When you get somebody that comes out on very forceful about guns, you can state your belief, but try to find something that everybody would agree to. And if she has young kids, one of the things that we're really working on is to make sure that guns are locked up and that the kids can't get a hold of them and literally shoot themselves. Or you can sense that maybe they're a little bit more aggressive, and you can say, I think you would agree that everybody that owns a gun has to have adequate training before they go out. So you have a little win. You won't win the big battle.
Very good, Bill.
A little win.
That's a great example. Mark Lundholm, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I had a couple of comments. One as an overall thing about the protests that we see going on now, and some of the protests that were going on before, that they are being infiltrated by people who are trying to create problems. And some of the people on the UCLA campus looked like maybe they were Proud Boys and pretending to be part of the protest. So this is something that we have to be aware of, and we should have discussions on how we can recognize if we're being infiltrated by people who are dishonest and not doing the peaceful things that we want to do. And reflecting back, I'm a Vietnam War era. We did all that protesting and the protests now, and you wonder, well, how is it really effective? It took a long time. when I got into graduate school in my environmental studies, we had a course in it was called advocacy. What was it? It was marketing and advocacy. It was the kind of stuff that we're doing here and that Indivisible is doing. Organization and advocacy. That's what it was. It was an interesting course. And so we do that. And how do we change things? And in Illinois, we can file witness slips and we can get involved in our political organization so we know what's going on and we know what the legislation is. So how do you affect change in the government takes a lot of work, but organization and advocacy is the way to get things done, I think. And maybe it diffuses some of the anger and you actually feel like maybe you're making some progress. And so for those of you that are outside Illinois, maybe look up what our witness slip program is in Illinois, because it enables people in Illinois to actually do lobbying on state issues that are coming across in the government. So it's a system that other states should be doing, I think, and maybe Indivisible can help promote some of those ideas. But anyway, I'm rambling on here, but that's what I see we're doing here tonight. And we keep doing it and we're effective. It takes a while. It's not a magic wand, but we're over the long haul. I think we can have a positive impact. So that's my 4 cents.
Well, and one thing too that was very grassroots and for me to see was Joyce Slavic and Jim McGrath. They showed up at school board meetings at 211, and I did go to support a number of times. And what they wanted the school board to do was to talk about gun storage safety. And originally, the school board said, "Oh, that's not our job." And there were speakers that were in our group that stood up, that we were allowed to talk for a couple minutes, talking about, well, first of all, you're in education, so you could be talking about educationally how to store a gun safely. That would be a learning tool. And secondly, you've got children walking in your building that may be very fearful of someone who they know has a gun that is not stored, or they themselves don't know how to approach their parents about it. So actually what happened over the next few months was they were able to, with us showing up and Jim and Joyce being persistent, but also patient and also respectful, it was put on the school board's curriculum that they were going to work with the police and have discussions in the school about it. So for me, that was maybe one of the first grassroots things that I've seen get accomplished by citizens. And it's something that I won't forget. It helped me have some positive feelings about what we can do, that our voices, and between Mary Beth Canty, who is our state rep, and Nabila and Mark Walker, I was at a meeting with them and they say, "We listen to you. Please contact us, send us an email, send us a letter. What concerns you? Get a group together that maybe together you can write letters. But we are listening to you. You are our constituent. You live in our districts. We want to make things better." So that was very empowering for me too. So we can do things. Okay. Julie, do you have anything else to say? Anybody have anything else to say?
Yes, I like all your faces. I finally see everybody. I'm glad to see you. And I wanted to add, Arlington Heights was Republican, and I think we switched it. Bill, you would probably know how quickly we turned Democratic, and we got our Democratic legislators in. But also, I was thinking of something else, and now I can't think about it, but yeah.
And Palatine too is now Democratic.
Oh, I know what. To thank the legislators, because they work hard and they get so much criticism. And I was at a Board of Education meeting for the high schools, and one woman stood up and she read a really obscene from a book that she wanted to get banned. And the next time I just spoke up at the next meeting and I just said, all children to be able to read. And I was just positive. And I thank the people, the superintendent and the Board of Education, because I know they don't get paid much, or they don't, they get a lot of criticism. So it's always helpful to thank people who are in public service, and it encouraged good people to run also. I think
Yes.
Kathy should run.
So, Julie, one of the reoccurring themes in the book, The Persuaders, is stand up and speak up. And so, if you're at that meeting, and Kathy, if you're at a board
School board.
school board meeting, and you stand up and you not defend, you just speak up what you're feeling, that is a huge check mark. It really registers with people. And to answer your question, Julie, in Arlington Heights, when I moved in here 45 years ago, it was red. It was Republican. And I didn't know a Democrat, because I was a Republican at that point. And then as time went on, fast forward to the Biden victory 3.5 years ago, it was 74% voted for Biden. I mean, what a change. And although around the neighborhood, everybody says, well, there's no Democrats around here, all Republicans. And I go, well, I don't know who voted, but we really did a nice job.
It looks like Nancy Greenman has her hand up.
Yes, hi. I don't know most of you. This is my first time to the a book discussion, and I don't have my book yet. It is on order. As you all spoke and referred to the book, these are all techniques that not only have I used for years, but that I also taught when I was a professor, and also that some groups that I'm in now are expounding. I mean, finding the common experience, the common idea, and building off of that and really listening. Those things are very important. But what I do want to say, that we can't be naive, and we have to be aware of several things, and that is embedded systemic racism. I mean, when we talk about immigrants, my parents being immigrants, or my mother was an immigrant, my father's father and mother were immigrants, but my color is within the acceptable range. So I can talk about that experience. But there are people whose worldviews, whose paradigms are such, and I just had a conversation with one today, that it's like you're talking like this, because the fundamental worldview is very different. And with those people, yes, you be respectful, Julie. You were really wonderful talking about how you go about doing that. But I get sometimes I get depressed just knowing that I'm making a little teeny dent and I'm not making enough change. I feel like I've been working on this all my life, and I'm hoping to see some change before I move on. It's today is one of those days. I have someone, I'm 78. I have someone I went to high school with whom I speak quite often. He is a Trumper, a conservative, an anti-vaxxer, all kinds of things. And I've learned, and yet he has a wonderful heart and he's very loving and so forth. I have to avoid certain topics with him. I can't even get into it because I won't discuss them with him, and that I find that sad, because of course I want to change his mind and get him to think my way. I mean, when he tells me that he's very excited about Robert Kennedy and this one and that one, and I go, oh goodness, I can't even relate. But the racism is something that some of the groups that I've been working with, we're working on that, the embedded racism, and trying to untangle that. And even some of us who, and even people of color who have been raised in our society, we have that embedded within us because it's a part of our culture. So we have to, I think, be vigilant in reflecting on ourselves
Yes.
and what messages we have coming up, and to navigate those messages, to negotiate in our heads with messages that come up that we don't intellectually agree with, but that somehow have been embedded because of the culture in which we were raised. So I'm going to stop talking now, but I just wanted to share some of that. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Nancy, thank you so much. Can I ask you, like you're saying you're working with some groups right now on race and attitudes. Are there any things that you are learning or that you could share with us on how to look at things a little differently?
Not right now, not explicitly, other than things that really were discussed here as well, and the self-reflection, and taking action on that, and meeting with people. There are no Black people, no African Americans in this group.
Oh, we do have Ori Pennick who she put in the chat, race matters. Ori
Okay.
she's wonderful.
Yes, I'm here.
There she is.
She said exactly what I was thinking, so thank you very much.
No problem. And but the thing is that we, how many people do we have that, I mean, I don't want to say some of my best friends are Black, but I've grown up with many African American friends and have dated many African Americans and so forth and so on. And still I constantly monitor myself. There's a race discussion that the music director of Van Gilmer, the music director at the Baha'i Temple, has, and it's for Baha'is and non-Baha'i. And he's plugged into a lot of groups in the north suburbs and so forth in the Chicago area. There are people here from other countries and so on. And they're on his discussion group also, and he calls that dialogues. And you can email Van to get on his list. It's usually the third Wednesday of the month. And he knows and always talks of other groups that meet in the northern suburbs. If we, as people who are of lighter skin, have access to people that people of darker skin might not, then it's our job to use the techniques that we're reading about in the Persuaders to open them up and have them start looking at racism in other ways. In other words, some people just don't listen to some people, right?
Right.
I mean, it's a fact of life. So those of us who can do need to raise our voices. And I've been doing it all my life, and I've gotten hate mail and other kinds of things. It's never stopped me from speaking out. I think as I get older, I'm a little more cautious because I can't run as fast. But anyway, and things like common things, even with guns, and I really am anti-gun, but I realize that when I went to summer camp many years ago, I became a sharpshooter in the NRA. I mean, the NRA was different then, but I had a certificate somewhere that said I was a sharpshooter. When I realized that, I horrified myself. And then I said, well, and I had boyfriends who like to shoot, and sometimes we'd go out to the dump and shoot, but never people. And I've never owned a gun, and I wouldn't. That emphasis on safety, I think, is really important. But anyway, I will work on, and you also, Kathy, looks like you were writing some stuff down, but I'll try to get as much information as I can before the next book group meeting.
That would be great, Nancy.
And
That would be great. And one thing I want to say, Bill went to the meeting in Schaumburg. He seems like he's got some bullet points in his pocket to share with people. So if you have some facts that you can, I don't know where everybody gets their information, if they get it from NPR, if they read the New York Times or our local papers, getting it on different websites, Bloomberg, things like that. Things that maybe we can all help each other learn about so that we have some things to say to people. We have that sensible first sentence and then the second one and the third one if it's needed. I thought that was really good for me because I do have to have a few facts in my pocket before I approach people. Okay, that's me. So anybody else have anything to share?
Well, I would suggest reading books. I'm thinking of the warmth of other stuff, and Isabel Wilkinson's book Cast. I mean, I think we don't want to think about it, but I think our caste is almost as bad as the one in India. So I think sharing books and information. Just a minute, my cat's going basting. Okay, sorry, really upset. Yeah, so reading books and sharing them, which is a good way to get facts. But also we realize sometimes facts don't work with people because they are emotionally have different attitudes.
We can do what we can. We definitely have an important year to strive to communicate better with people. Does anybody else have anything to share? This is great. As I say, if there's anything else anybody has to say, I guess I have one thing I was listening on the radio about in Alabama, in a lot of the southern states, so I guess everywhere, I don't know, I guess since it got passed, like affirmative action or there are Black athletes that are being asked to protest playing ball in certain southern universities, like University of Alabama, which just makes me crazy because they are not going to, you have to have better grades or whatever. And they're asking these children, these young athletes who've worked so hard through high school, who've given up a lot, to almost be the ones that have to be the foot soldiers when it comes to ridiculous systemic racism at these universities. Like what Nancy was saying, and Julie, is that we should be there marching right alongside and speaking out for them, because it just struck me so horribly when I was listening to it that the things were passed in Alabama and now there's no looking at maybe someone's race when it comes to football achievement and grades. Everybody's the same. And in Alabama, in my judgment, there might be a lot more white people on that football team than Black young men that are very deserving. So I just feel sometimes we need to be there alongside and learn more about what they are involved with and what they've gone through all their lives, and not to have to be the foot soldiers every time. So that's something that I just thought of as we were talking. Anybody else? Bill, do you want to talk about what's coming up? That's a busy calendar.
Can you email that to us, Bill, so we can print it out?
Yes, we can. And this is our sketch sheet as to what we're looking at. It's not just ours. It's ours and the Indivisible Illinois group and Indivisible National. And if you see something that's circled in green, that's Indivisible National or Indivisible Illinois. If it's circled in blue, it's one of our 10 issue groups. Usually about 7 of those have meetings every month. Plus we do some total months. And you'll note that on Sunday, the 19th, we have a written in circle that says bad faith. Just agreed to be one of the groups that are going to preview bad faith, which it is about the religious right basically becoming what the bad faith is calling white nationalism. And it's costing us some money, but we're going to do that. And then on that Thursday, our gun violence prevention group, that's on the 23rd, will actually do a gun violence prevention commentary keyed on this bad faith.
Oh,
But so as you look through here, you'll see that this next Monday, there's an Indivisible leadership call. On Tuesday, we're hoping to have free pizza night for local people, just to get down and not talk politics, but talk issues only. Issues, not politics. Every morning, Monday through Friday, 9 to 10, we have what is called coffee and conversation, where we just kind of talk about stuff. Sometimes we talk about the Cubs. Sometimes we talk about the Blackhawks. Sometimes we talk about world wars. We talk about Ukraine, etc., or we'll talk about a local political race. It's designed as if a group was meeting for breakfast in the morning, and they just kind of bring up stuff to talk about. So that's every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. and then every Friday night at 5
And
o'clock.
Bill, where is that? Is that on Zoom?
That is on Zoom. And all of the NWSOFA Zooms are using the same link that you used tonight.
Okay.
And when we send out copies of this to you, you'll see all those listed. And so Friday nights at 5 o'clock, we do a happy hour, which is kind of a recap of what people are believing and thinking, and we make it as open as possible. And we've been getting a lot of young college students, and what they're wanting to talk about is Gaza. They're wanting to talk about what's happening in the Middle East, and we let them, and then we share our experiences with them. So it's really cool. You'll see that every Wednesday and every Thursday at 1 p.m., we tie together with Field Team 6 to talk about doing Twitter and Instagram and to doing Threads, which is a social media. We do that for an hour and a half. You'll notice that our Stand With Women group will be this next Thursday at 9 p.m. Again, that will be at the same link. And then Monday on the 13th, our Restore Our Democracy group is going to be doing a very broad at immigration. And Ed Spire does just an excellent job. This last month he did Project 2025, huge group that attended, and lots of reactions on that. And then our fiscal and economic group meets on the 21st. As I said before, our gun violence prevention team also meets on Thursday, the 22nd. And then our climate change group will meet on Tuesday, the 28th.
I think
We're
the
very
gun
large.
violence bill is on the 23rd.
on Thursday, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, you are correct. I'm sorry.
yeah.
So we're a very large group locally here. We have 5,200 members. And to manage that, we have 24 leads like Kathy and Julie tonight, who take on the responsibility of producing this stuff every month. And it is no small task. My hat's off to them. And all of our leads work on either the communication side or the issue sides. And they just do an excellent job. And then we bring in other groups like on the, where did they go? On the 16th, we're tying together with Indivisible Evanston, Naperville, and several other groups to bring a program about the youth vote. And we have Victor Shee and the lady that was her name will fall out of my head in a second. That was part of the Nixon impeachment trial.
Wine.
Yes,
Jill
yes.
Winebanks.
Jill
Winebanks.
Winebanks, yeah.
Yeah.
Jill Wine.
Victor Shee.
Amazing.
Fabulous. Yeah.
Amazing.
And so they said, would you guys like to co-sponsor on that? We said, I'm not even going to think about it. Yes. So we really appreciate everybody being on. We have a huge group that is working to from our perspective, save democracy as we know it today. You've heard a lot. Don't be afraid to share your personal experiences and to engage conversations. To the people that you know it's going to be delicate, do it delicately. To people who agree with you, come out and just say what you need. Above all, let your kids, let your grandchildren, let the youth know of our experiences collectively that we've had. Believe it or not, many of the kids we're talking to today don't even know what Vietnam was. They have no idea that we had a president that had to leave, Richard Nixon. They have what they see in their glasses is what today, and they always think, my God, it's never been like this. Well, yes, it is. It's always been some level of this, maybe not as divided, but it is a level like this. So my hat's off to Kathy and to Julie. Thank you for everything that you've done. And everybody who's still on, thank you so much. We'll be sending out a video and we'll be sending out the slides to you all within this next week. So, Kathy, back to you.
Thank you. And thank you, Bill and Christine, for making us look good. And thank you, everyone. I know if you're like me, I really enjoy reading the book. We're hoping to have this. I think June is the last month we're doing this. So we're going to finish the book and we'll get together. And next time, I don't know what the date will be. We'll figure that out with vacations and graduations and all, but it will be in June. And you'll get enough notice about it. And if there's anything that you want to send to us or through Mobilize, that would be great. Any comments, and then we can continue on. But we appreciate, and just get your facts and be patient and lean in. I love that word, lean into others. Find out what their story is, but know your story also and share it with pride.
Yeah. And I liked learning about you and getting to meet you, even if it's on Zoom, right? So thanks for being us.
All right. Thanks. And we're done for the evening. All right. Thank you.